There is a satellite photo taken from space at night that tells you everything you need to know about North Korea in a single image. The bottom half of the Korean peninsula is blazing with light. A trillion-dollar economy with skyscrapers, bullet trains, and K-pop concerts, lighting up the sky. The top half is completely black, as if someone drew a line across the map and erased an entire country from existence. 26 million human beings live in that darkness. But here is the part that breaks your brain. Somewhere inside that pitch-black void, a man is riding in a $500,000 armored Mercedes Maybach, eating imported caviar, and building nuclear weapons that can reach the west coast of the United States. North Korea's estimated GDP is roughly $28 billion, smaller than the annual revenue of a single American company like Starbucks. The GDP per capita is approximately $600, which means the average North Korean earns less in an entire year than the average American earns in a single week. Yet somehow this country maintains a standing army of over 1 million soldiers, has tested nuclear warheads, launched intercontinental ballistic missiles, and in 2025 alone, its hackers stole over $2 billion in cryptocurrency from exchanges around the world. How is any of this mathematically possible? That is the question we are answering today, and the answer reads like a crime thriller, not an economics textbook. There are 3 hidden economies keeping North Korea alive, and today we are going to break open each one so you can follow the money to exactly where it goes. To understand how North Korea's economy works today, you first have to understand how it collapsed. The founding ideology of North Korea is something called Juche, which roughly translates to self-reliance. The idea is that North Korea depends on no one and produces everything it needs domestically. It is a beautiful idea on a propaganda poster and a complete lie in reality. For decades, North Korea was not self-reliant at all. It was essentially on life support from the Soviet Union. The Soviets provided cheap oil, food aid, industrial equipment, and technical expertise that kept the entire North Korean economy running. The country's factories, farms, and military were all connected to Soviet supply lines like an infant connected to an umbilical cord. Then, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and overnight that umbilical cord was cut. What happened next was one of the worst humanitarian disasters of the 20th century. Without Soviet oil, the tractors stopped running, and the farms could not produce food. Without Soviet coal and electricity subsidies, the factories went dark and the cities went cold. The state-run distribution system, which was the only legal way for North Koreans to receive food, simply stopped delivering. The regime called it the Arduous March. The rest of the world calls it a famine that killed somewhere between 240,000 and 3.5 million people out of a population of 22 million. To put that in American terms, imagine if a famine hit the United States and killed somewhere between 3 and 50 million people in the span of 4 years. That is the scale of what happened inside that dark patch on the satellite map. The government told its people to eat 2 meals a day instead of 3, then 1 meal, then to forage for roots and bark. The entire centralized economy, the one the propaganda posters bragged about, evaporated. And in that vacuum, something extraordinary happened. When the government stopped feeding the people started feeding themselves. Out of pure survival, ordinary North Koreans began doing something that was technically illegal under their own system. They started trading with each other. A woman who had extra corn would trade it with a neighbor who had soap. A man who could fix radios would trade repairs for rice. Small groups began gathering at roadsides and alleyways to buy and sell whatever they could find. These makeshift markets are called Jangmadang, which literally means market grounds. Here is the extraordinary irony. Inside the most aggressively communist country on earth, at the absolute lowest point of its existence, raw, unfiltered capitalism was born. Not because anyone chose it ideologically, but because survival demanded it. The Jangmadang started as desperate roadside bartering, but over 3 decades they have evolved into a sprawling underground economy that now powers the daily life of nearly every North Korean citizen. Structured surveys of North Korean defectors, conducted by researchers and published as recently as March 2026, have consistently put the informal market share of household income at roughly 70%. That means 7 out of every $10 a North Korean earns does not come from the government or from any official state job. It comes from the black market. The Jangmadang sell everything from Chinese electronics and South Korean cosmetics to USB drives loaded with smuggled K-dramas and K-pop music. Rice prices in these markets have surged from 6,000 to 8,000 won per kilogram to over 10,000 won, as the regime has recently tried to crack down on market activity. But the regime faces an impossible dilemma. If they shut down the Jangmadang, their own people starve because the official economy cannot feed them. If they allow the Jangmadang to thrive, capitalism slowly erodes the ideological foundation of the entire regime. So they do what authoritarian governments always do: they tolerate it while pretending it does not exist, and they tax it from the shadows. Now that you understand how ordinary North Koreans survive, let us answer the much darker question: how does the regime itself get its money? How does Kim Jong-un afford nuclear missiles and armored Mercedes when his country's official economy is smaller than a mid-sized American city? The answer is a place called Room 39. Room 39, also known as Bureau 39 or Office 39, is a secretive organization that operates directly under the control of the Kim family. It was established in the late 1970s, and its sole purpose is to generate foreign currency for the Supreme Leader's personal slush fund. Think of it as a government agency whose entire mission is organized crime. Room 39 oversees a portfolio of illegal operations that would make an actual mafia boss jealous. The first operation is counterfeiting. North Korea produced some of the most sophisticated counterfeit American $100 bills ever created, so perfect that even the U.S. Secret Service struggled to distinguish them from real currency. These fakes were called supernotes, and they circulated through criminal networks in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East for years, injecting millions of forged dollars into the global economy. The second operation is drug manufacturing and trafficking. North Korean state-run laboratories have produced methamphetamine and other narcotics that are then smuggled out of the country through diplomatic pouches and government-sanctioned trade networks. When your drug lab is run by the government itself, there is no police force coming to shut it down. The third operation is weapons trafficking. North Korea has sold conventional arms, missile technology, and even nuclear know-how to countries and groups under international sanctions, from Syria to Iran to various non-state actors. But the crown jewel of Room 39's modern operations, the one that has exploded in scale over the past 5 years, is cybercrime. This brings us to the Lazarus Group. The Lazarus Group is a state-sponsored hacking unit that operates under North Korean military intelligence and is directly linked to Room 39's revenue pipeline. In 2000 alone, North Korean hackers stole $2.02 billion in cryptocurrency, according to blockchain analytics firm Chainalysis. That single year's haul from cybercrime represented roughly 7% of North Korea's entire official GDP. The biggest single heist happened on February 21, 2005, when the Lazarus Group hacked the cryptocurrency exchange Bybit and stole approximately $1.5 billion in Ethereum in a single attack. The FBI officially attributed the attack to North Korea within 6 days. The Wilson Center described it as the largest cryptocurrency heist in history. To put $1.5 billion in perspective, that single hack generated more revenue than what North Korea spent on its entire nuclear weapons program over the past 50 years, which various estimates place between $1.1 and $1.6 billion total. One hack, one afternoon, more money than 5 decades of nuclear development. The stolen cryptocurrency is then laundered through a complex web of mixing services, decentralized exchanges, and chain-hopping techniques designed to make the funds untraceable. The BBC reported that within just 2 weeks of the Bybit hack, the Lazarus group had already cashed out hundreds of millions of dollars worth of the stolen tokens. This money flows directly back to the regime, where it funds 3 things. First, the nuclear and missile programs that give Kim Jong-un his geopolitical leverage. Second, the luxury goods that keep the tiny elite class loyal, including those famous Mercedes-Maybach limousines that somehow make it past international sanctions through shell companies spanning 5 countries and 3 cargo jets. Third, the surveillance and security apparatus that keeps the 26 million ordinary citizens in line. And this is where the full picture of North Korea's economy comes into horrifying focus. There is no single North Korean economy. There are 2 completely separate economies operating in parallel, and they have almost nothing to do with each other. The first is what you might call the royal economy. This is Room 39's world, the world of cryptocurrency heists and counterfeit dollars and weapons deals and luxury imports. This economy exists solely to serve the Kim family and the tiny elite circle around them, perhaps 1 to 2% of the total population. The second is the survival economy. This is the Jangmadang, the black markets where 70% of household income originates. This economy exists because the government abandoned its own people during the famine and never came back. The regime is not an economy. It is a parasite. It sits on top of a population that feeds itself through illegal markets, and it funds itself through international crime. And the 2 systems are connected only by the thread of fear and surveillance that prevents the people on the bottom from ever challenging the people on the top. A South Korean government think tank concluded in February 2026 that North Korea's economy likely grew by about 10% cumulatively over the past 5 years. But that growth was not driven by factories or farms or any normal economic activity. It was driven by the staggering increase in cybercrime revenue, the resumption of overseas forced labor deployments, and the expansion of trade with Russia and China. North Korea planned to send 28,000 additional workers overseas in 2025, mostly to Russia, where BBC investigations found them laboring 18-hour days in what defectors described as slave-like conditions. The workers' wages are confiscated by the regime, which keeps up to 90% of their earnings. This is not an economy, it is a hostage operation run at national scale. The satellite photo tells the truth. South Korea's GDP per capita is approximately $36,000. North Korea's is roughly $600. That is a 60-to-1 ratio between 2 countries that share the same peninsula, the same language, the same cultural roots, separated only by an ideological line drawn 70 years ago. Every dollar that flows through the Jangmadang is a testament to human resilience, to people who refused to die when their government left them to starve. And every dollar that flows through Room 39 is a testament to something else entirely, to the extraordinary lengths a regime will go to survive at the expense of its own people. Follow the money, and you will always find the truth about a society. In North Korea, the money tells you that the government is not broke. The people are. The government is running a billion-dollar criminal enterprise while its citizens carry backpacks full of worthless currency to the market just to buy a bag of rice. That is the secret economy of North Korea. Thank you for watching, and if this video expanded your understanding of how money and power really work, hit the subscribe button. Next time we are bringing you another deep dive into an economy that the world does not fully understand, broken down so simply that a 5-year-old could follow along. I will see you in the next one.